Welcome back to the Triforce Wielders Series, where we are finding out who the strongest Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf are. In the last two episodes, we found out that the heir of Wild Zelda was the strongest wielder Wisdom, and the hero Legend was the strongest wielder of Courage. In the final episode of the series, we will look at every Ganon and Ganondorf and figure out which one is the strongest wielder of Power. I really enjoyed how we ranked the Links in the last video, so we will use that same chart again, but the categories will change a little bit. In the first category, we will determine the strength of the Ganon we are looking at. The magic and weapons he uses in a game will help us determine how strong that Ganon actually is. Next, we will talk about his plan in the game we are looking at, and determine if Ganon had a good plan in that game or not. And lastly, I think we need to talk about how each Ganon is as a final boss. Some are sort of basic, while others get your heart pumping non-stop, so we'll figure out which Ganon those are later. And one last thing, keep in mind that not including Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf and Four Swords Adventures Ganon, the rest of the Ganons are technically the same being, but we'll treat them individually because their strength changes and their plans change over time. Other than that, I think we are ready to begin, so let's go. First off, we start with Zelda's most iconic version of Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time. He isn't the strongest Ganon in the series due to not using any form of weapons, but his ability and magic is very present, so the strength roll will be filled halfway. Despite not being the most powerful Ganondorf, his plan was a great one that almost worked. He wanted to get into the Sacred Realm, take the Triforce for his own, and take over Hyrule. He was able to get into the Sacred Realm thanks to Link, and he did take over Hyrule, but he was only able to obtain the Triforce of Power. When he tried to get the other pieces from Link and Zelda, he failed and was sealed away by the sages. The plan row for this Ganondorf will be almost full, but not all the way, because he failed overall. Lastly, how is this version of Ganondorf as a final boss? I think the bar will be over halfway, because while it's an easy battle, the music is so great in both phases. And seeing the Gerudo Man transform into Ganon for the first time in the series is so memorable. Overall, this Ganondorf makes for a great Zelda villain, but let's find out if there are stronger versions out there. If we move on to the child timeline, we have Ganondorf in Twilight Princess, so let's see what his stats are. I would say this version of Ganondorf is stronger than the one from Ocarina of Time. He survives his execution, kills one of the sages, survives his banishment in the Twilight Realm, survives the explosion of Hyrule Castle, and uses the mighty sword of the Water Sage in his battle. So the strength bar will be filled all the way. Unlike Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time, this version's plan isn't as good, but still isn't a bad one. Ganondorf seeks revenge on Hyrule and uses the fake king of Twilight Zant to carry out the invasion of Hyrule. There is more detail, but overall, that was his entire plan, which failed by the way, so the plan will be filled less than halfway. For the final battle category, I have a problem ranking this one. I grew up playing Twilight Princess before any other Zelda game, and I was so amazed by the final battle. It was so much more exciting and impactful in my life than any battle I fought against Bowser early on. Due to my experiences, this bar would be all the way filled, but for this video, we need to leave my nostalgia out, unfortunately. The music for every single phase is epic. But the battles are way too easy, and I can see how many players think it isn't the best. The roll will be filled just a bit halfway due to how good the music is. Overall, this Ganondorf is a step down from Ocarina of Time Ganondorf, but will remain my favorite in the entire series. The last Ganon in the child timeline is the one in Four Swords Adventures, which is actually a different reincarnation of Ganondorf. He isn't a super powerful Ganon, but is stronger than quite a few Ganons. For his plan, it wasn't a really developed plan, unlike Ocarina of Time Ganondorf. For a final boss, it's pretty fun, but can often be forgotten at times, so it isn't as iconic. Overall, I think this Ganon is often forgot about because he didn't impact the series much compared to the rest of the Ganons in the series. Moving on to the adult timeline, we have the Ganondorf from Wind Waker. I feel like this Ganondorf is the weakest version of his Gerudo form, but he was sealed away for several years and had been hiding away in this flooded era of Hyrule, so I can understand how he lost some of his strength. Because of this, the strength roll will be filled almost halfway, but not quite. Same with his plan, he didn't have a great one. His resources were very limited at the time, so he just sent the Helmet Rock King to find and kidnap girls with blonde hair and pointy ears, hoping to find the new incarnation of Princess Zelda. At the end, when the Triforce is right in front of Ganondorf, the King of Hyrule uses it to grant his wish, messing up Ganondorf's plan completely. This role will be filled only a little bit as well. Despite the lack of strength and a good plan, the final fight against him is very exciting and tense, with the great orchestral music blasting in the background, and Ganondorf using his two swords which have the names of his surrogate mothers on them, Kotake and Koume. Even before the battle, Ganondorf explains why he wanted Hyrule so badly, so I would rank this as a full 10 out of 10 final boss fight. If we go to the Downfall timeline, we first encounter Ganon in A Link to the Past, the same monster that Ganondorf transformed into in Ocarina of Time. In this game, he isn't as strong as some other versions, and we don't see him as much in the entire game, so I'll only rank his strength a little bit. His plan isn't as involved either, so I'll rank it the same as his strength. Lastly, him as a final boss is really basic, and the only thing that can get this to rank higher is the awesome soundtrack in the background. Overall, this Ganon isn't scored as the best in the series, but I can understand how good of a battle it is from a nostalgic point of view. Unfortunately, Ganon isn't in the Oracle series for a long period and is quickly revived by Twinrova. Since his revival had to be executed early, he was a mindless, raging beast, and wasn't as clever as many other Ganons. His strength would be the only thing that is really ranked at all, for he has no plan in this game, and he isn't really memorable as a final boss. Next up, we have the first ever version of Ganon in Zelda 1986. He isn't super strong, but he has the power to become invisible and launch balls of magic at Link, so he does have some strength to him. His plan was decent, for he saved the Triforce of Wisdom and was very close to getting it until Zelda split it into pieces. As a final boss, he has to rank halfway. I know he is even more basic than his version in A Link to the Past, but this was the very first appearance of Ganon entirely, who established the best Zelda villain in the entire series. Overall, he is a basic version of Ganon, but a very iconic final boss for that matter. In the era of Wild, we move on to a new form of Ganon, a sort of puppet that was conjured by the sealed corpse of the Demon King Ganondorf, who we'll talk about soon. Calamity Ganon was a beast that would attack the Kingdom of Hyrule every 10,000 years or so. He has incredible strength, for he takes control of all the guardians and divine beasts, so the strength roll will be almost filled. This Ganon probably has the best plan in the entire series, and on top of that, it works unlike any other Ganon we have discussed, so the plan roll will be filled all the way. For a final boss, the battle is really unique because it was the first open-air Zelda final boss fight. The first phase against his spider form is really fun in my opinion, but the Dark Beast Ganon fight is more of a cutscene than a battle. The music is the best though in the fight, so the final boss will be filled halfway. I think what we took away from this is that Calamity Ganon is very powerful and clever when it comes to taking over Hyrule. And finally, we have the creator of Calamity Ganon in the most recent version of Ganondorf since Twilight Princess in 2006. Tears of the Kingdom, like Four Swords Adventures, introduced an entirely new version of Ganondorf, so let's take a look at his stats. This Ganondorf is extremely powerful and is skilled with sword, spear, bow, and double-handed weapons. He is also able to conjure a puppet version of Zelda and has the power to use Gloom, which is enhanced once he steals Sonia's secret stone and becomes the Demon King. I think that the strength row deserves to be fully filled for this Ganondorf. When you see Ganondorf, you think of the man with a reason behind his actions. That's not the case with this Ganondorf though. He just one day wants to take over Hyrule and becomes jealous of Raru's power of light. He doesn't end up taking over Hyrule, and once he is awakened several thousands of years later, he just stays in the depths, regaining power from the gloom. The plan bar for this Ganondorf won't be filled much, which is disappointing to me if I'm being honest. And lastly, how was the final fight against Ganondorf since Twilight Princess? The build up to the fight is incredible. The Zonai music that plays when entering his lair, fighting Ganondorf's army alongside the sages, the music while fighting Ganondorf. Everything about every phase of the final battle of Tears of the Kingdom is amazing, and I think it's worthy of filling up an entire row. Besides his plan, Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf is a giant dude you don't want to mess with at all, unless you are as courageous as Link. Now that we have ranked all the Ganons and Ganondorfs, let's take a look at who is the strongest, who has the best plan, and who is the best final boss. According to the charts we made, the strongest and mightiest Ganon would be Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf and Twilight Princess Ganondorf. The Ganon with the best plan would be Calamity Ganon. And lastly, the best Ganon as a final boss would be a mix-up between Wind Waker and Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf. So which Ganondorf is better as a final boss, or which Ganondorf is stronger? I'm gonna have to say Wind Waker Ganondorf is the best as a final boss, but I really believe it's because I like him better story-wise compared to Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf. For strength, I would have to say Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf is stronger because he becomes a Demon King like the mice and lives for several thousands of years. Plus, the man is just built unlike any other Ganondorf. We have Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf, Calamity Ganon, and Wind Waker Ganondorf, all competing. So who was the ultimate strongest wielder of power? I think that Ganondorf from Tears of the Kingdom is the strongest. Normally I would go Calamity Ganon because his plan was the only one that worked, and he was able to do more destruction to Hyrule than Ganondorf was. But remember, this monster is only possible due to the hatred of the Demon King Ganondorf. And you have to give the guy a bit of slack, because he is so weak from being sealed away for thousands of years, so he needed to get his strength back instead of being on the surface. With the wielder power, wisdom, and courage all ranked, we have completed the Triforce Wielders Series. In case you forgot, let's review who the strongest Triforce Wielders are. The strongest wielder of wisdom is Era of Wild Zelda. The strongest wielder of courage is the Hero of Legend. And the strongest wielder of power is Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf. Thank you so much for watching all my videos on ranking these three iconic individuals. If you disagree with my rankings on any of them, feel free to let me know who you think the strongest Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf are. I enjoyed making this series a lot, but I think I'm ready to move on with my videos now. Subscribe to my channel for more Zelda lore content, as well as my Zelda Month podcast series you can watch and listen to Zelda discussions. You can also find me on Twitter with the link in the description and channel page. And I hope you guys all have a great day, and I'll see you on our next adventure.